Hi everyone, good morning to all the attendees. I'm Silvia Ullo, and as an engineer and member of many women's associations, and among them especially the IEEE Women in Engineering, I'm very honored to chair this panel on the gender bias in the workplace. And I'm sure that the presentations of our keynote speakers will be of interest to everybody, with important insights to help all of us in realizing a harmonious and not toxic work environment for women and for men. I see our session well integrated into the IEEE Radar Conference. Given the leitmotif chosen for the conference, Renaissance meets advancing technology, and the Florence city chosen as its venue, where between the mid-14th century and the early 15th century, the Renaissance develops with its new worldview. We cannot forget that Florence gave the birth to the great poet Dante Alighieri, who put the seeds of the Renaissance man, enriching his figure over the time span from the end of the Middle Ages to the Renaissance, and then led to the Enlightenment, the Illuminismo, and the contemporary culture. To these new men, Dante first and then Petrarch, hand over the female figure as an asset to be protected. They idealize the woman, angelic for Dante and earthly for Petrarch, but certainly not submissive and weak, but strong and above all necessary to human destinies, a sort of heroine of their times. So, in this case, I wonder now what's going on. In the 21st century, what are the behaviors towards the women? What has been the progress after 6 centuries? We are going to discuss a topic of great interest concerning gender equality at the workplace and possible biases. Which are the strategies to combat gender bias at the workplace? The Women in Engineering panel aims at discussing this issue. Let me thank our sponsors, IEEE Aerospace and Electronic Systems Society, the Springer editor, and the IEEE Italy section Women in Engineering Affinity Group, before giving the floor to the first speaker, who represents the chair of IEEE Italy section, WIE Affinity Group, Professor Diana Cassioli. Diana, please.
Good morning. I'm honored to take part of this panel session at the 2020 IEEE Radar Conference. I'm going to give the presentation titled WIE.steer2STEM.chart, which is the commitment chart of the IEEE Women in Engineering Italy section. My name is Diana Cassioli. I'm Associate Professor of Telecommunications Engineering at the University of L'Aquila in Italy, and I serve as the chair of the IEEE Italy section WIE Affinity Group since 2017. My contact is the email you find here, and please visit our website and join our Facebook and LinkedIn groups to keep updated about our initiatives and activities. My presentation will follow this outline. I will give a brief introduction about the Women in Engineering International, which is the worldwide organization. And then I will present the local unit, which is the WIE Affinity Group of the IEEE Italy section, which I chair. Then I will focus on the commitment chart, and I will explain what is it, what is the governance. I will report the history of this commitment chart, and then I will present what's next. The IEEE Women in Engineering is the largest international professional organization to promote female engineers and scientists into technological careers and inspiring girls around the world to pursue their dreams if they want to pursue a career in engineering. The mission of IEEE is to facilitate the global inspiration, engagement, and advancement of women in technical disciplines. However, the IEEE envisions a vibrant community involving both women and men to encourage diversity, to use their diverse talents to innovate for the benefit of humanity. Some numbers about the Women in Engineering in 2019. The Women in Engineering International is a global organization spread worldwide, and it is organized in small local units, typically covering one country. These local units are the WIE affinity groups. We have more than 900 affinity groups around the world, spread all over more than 100 countries. The Women in Engineering has more than 16,000 members and organizes a lot of global events to inspire girls. One is the annual International Leadership Conference. 10 events are organized at the regional level and more than 700 events at the local level. Just a few words about the membership. This year, the WIE Affinity Group of the IEEE Italy section was awarded by the Most Increased Memberships Award 2020, because the number of members was increased 300% with respect to 2019 to 2018. So we are proud of this big achievement. The membership option for women in engineering is available to both men and women. The dues are waived for student members, graduate student members, and life members. And it is worth to mention that 1/3 of the WIE's membership is male, because I want to specify that women in engineering is not reserved to women, but it is just dedicated to women. Our slogan is this: inspire, engage, encourage, empower girls into engineering and STEM careers, to make them aware of their talents and their capabilities to pursue a career in engineering or technological context. So our slogan is, I change the world, I am an engineer. For the Italy section, the WIE Affinity Group was founded in December 2017, and I personally collected the signatures to start the process for the establishment of this group. In July 2017, we organized the elections for the management board, and I was elected as the chair of this affinity group, and we formally started our activities. Of course, in line with the objectives of the WIE International, we aim to promote and support the presence of female engineers in the universities, industries, and institutions at the national level. Our mission is to create a collaborative environment in which members, be they men or women, can establish new relationships, share ideas and projects to increase the presence of women. We want to stimulate concrete changes through education, leadership, positive models, and mentoring, and that's why we created the commitment chart. Our overall objective is, of course, to widen the number of women in STEM to guarantee the future growth of our country. Consider that the job offer for ICT and technological jobs is very high, And we cannot expect a big growth if we leave out half of the manpower of the country because of gender. So it is important to involve women in technological career for the growth of the country. Our objectives are to facilitate the development of the educational programs and activities in this direction, to promote the entry and also the permanence of women in engineering, to promote women in leadership roles within IEEE, but also for the advancement of women in STEM professions in general. And to this aim, we organize events and receptions to improve awareness, share the best practices, and promote new members in WIE. We also established a network with similar associations and initiatives at the national level to strengthen the effectiveness of our actions. Please visit our website and join our Facebook and LinkedIn groups to keep updated about our initiatives. Let's now start with the presentation of the commitment chart, the WIE.steer2STEM.chart version 1.0. This chart was created during the annual event of WIE and is revised annually. So what is it? It is an open document. It is annually revised and renewed and collects the objectives and actions to be taken to make STEM careers more attractive to female. It was jointly agreed by the promoting and supporting committees. The governance of the commitment chart, of course, it has a coordinator with Patrizia Lamberti from the University of Salerno in Italy, who serves as the vice chair of the Women in Engineering Affinity Group of the Italy section. And the chart is subscribed by the promoting committee and by the supporting committee. The promoting committee is a set of associations who created the chart and will commit to implement all objectives of the chart, which are measured against specific KPIs. The supporting committee, which is still in the phase of definition, instead commits to implement a subset of objectives. The identity card of the commitment chart, it was created in Palermo on September 12, 2018, during the second annual meeting of the WIE Affinity Group Italy, within the International Conference of the IEEE Italy section, RTSI 2018. It was updated to the version 1.0 in Florence in September 11, 2019, during the third annual meeting of the WIE Italy, co-located with RTSI 2019. And the version 2.0, the process was started right after the third annual meeting, but then this version will be released after the fourth meeting of the WIE Italy section that will be organized on November 20, 2020 in hybrid mode, so from online and in person, jointly with the WIE, which is the Women in Sensors, with the support of the Italian chapter on sensors of IEEE. So in 2018, during the second meeting of the IEEE Italy section Women Engineering Affinity Group, we started the process of the creation of this commitment chart, organizing two panel sessions. The first one was dedicated to the identification of best practice and policies applied by companies and institutions in drawing young girls to STEM. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then the second panel was dedicated to identify future directions. So what is the way forward? And we created this commitment chart. What was the final outcome? It was the collection of the identified needs in 2018. And this collection was mapped to 12 measurable objectives that will drive our activities in the future. Then, during the third meeting of the Women Engineering Affinity Group Italy section, we organized a panel session where we invited the youngest members of Women in Engineering, so the students, to give their opinions about the commitment chart in order to make the commitment chart closer to the needs of young girls pursuing STEM studies. The result was the version 1.0, so the update of the commitment chart. And we also organized in Florence a poster session called Geneva, which is dedicated to the presentation of policies and best practice applied in research projects at the national, European, or international level to pursue the gender balance into research projects. So the version 1.0 presents 12 objectives for which we also defined specific KPIs. I can mention just few of them. The most important is the mentoring, so the sharing of our skill, sharing of our experiences and orientation since the primary school. To demonstrate the advantages of female inclusion in work teams, especially in industries, and to promote the best practices to support women in STEM fields, and also open dialogues with the institutions to improve the actions in support of girls in STEM. What's next now? There are goals and dreams, so we encourage all of you to bring your dreams in our next annual meeting of the WIE Italy section, which will be held in November 2020 in hybrid mode, so online and in person. To release the y.steer2stem.chart version 2.0. Please keep updated visiting our website. I thank you very much for your attention. Keep updated visiting our website, and do not hesitate to contact me in case you would like to promote initiatives that could be of interest for us. Thank you very much.
Diana, thank you. Very interesting presentation. Thank you for this detailed explanation of the WIE affinity group worldwide and in Italy. I have a question. Which have been the challenges, if any, that you faced with the association to integrate the affinity group in the technical engineering events, if you have?
Thank you, Silvia, for this question. Actually, in Italy, I was encouraged by the IEEE Italy section to found this group. I'm responsible of collecting all the signatures to create this group. And I have to say that I received all the time a lot of enthusiasm from Italians, a lot of support, and I continuously receive requests to organize events in conferences, technical conferences, or separate events. We're establishing strong relationships with other associations of women in Italy. For example, women in ICT from ICA, the women in AFSIA, and the WWE, and Valore D, which is the associations for women in industry. So with all this network, we find very often you know, a good environment to spread our ideas and the support for women. So I think that there is a lot of awareness in the country about this problem of involving women into the technological careers in general. And of course, sometimes we see a bit of resistance still there, you know, about involving women strongly. The good news is that we met also engineers from companies who are supporting the women in leadership roles and also in the profession in general. And we know that these industries are very happy of having diversity into the teams, because they observed an increase in the profits of the company, because new ideas come when the groups are heterogeneous and they can
very interesting, Diana. Thank you very much, because, you know, I have to, you know, to follow the time, you know, you understand.
Sure.
So thank you very much again. And the floor now goes to Linda Shaw. She's a cognitive neuroscientist. And I like it a lot what she wrote on her LinkedIn account, because besides a founder of the Neuroscience Professional Development Program, she writes that she's a fun seeker. So this is very interesting. And let's give the floor to Linda Shaw with her presentation.
Hello, everyone. Did you know that the only people who do not have unconscious bias are dead people? This means that we all have unconscious bias, and that means that that doesn't necessarily make us bad people. Unconscious bias are really efficient and effective and necessary, but they can also cause big problems. My name's Linda Shaw, and I'm here to demonstrate gender bias when recruiting for an engineering company. Now, unconscious bias is something that we have as a side effect because the brain is actually exposed to a huge amount of stimuli at any one time. This means that it's having to process things very, very, very quickly. So it categorizes things for ease of filing, if you like. So if you see something with 4 legs, a tail, ears, you go dog category, put that in dog category. Then in a minute you can think, oh heavens no, it's got very big whiskers, I think it might be a cat. So you can see what happens is we actually use all this system for speed and efficiency, and this system is called heuristics. But the problem with heuristics is there's a side effect, and the side effect is the unconscious bias. And this is what we need to work with, because when it comes to recruiting people, when it comes to employing people, when it comes to nurturing people in the business world and outside, unconscious bias can be extremely painful and extremely unhelpful. So let us begin. But before I start, there is one thing I do want to say. I am going to be speaking in a very generalized, stereotypical gender fashion. Okay, this is to make it easier for you to understand what the experiment meant and how we did it. Now, I was asked by a large television company in the UK to help them with a documentary. And the documentary's purpose was to establish if there is unconscious bias for the first interview for an IT expert in an engineering company. So that's what we did. We got 18 employment recruiters from outside to come into the studio, and we balanced them for gender. So there were 9 men and there were 9 women. And their only brief was choose 2 candidates, 1 from each set of CVs that you're going to be shown to go for first interview. That's all they knew. They knew nothing else. So the first set of CVs, we split these people into 2 groups. The first set of CVs had name plus photo. The second set of CVs had no name and no photo. The second group, we counterbalanced the order of this. So the first set of CVs the second group saw was no name, no photo. The second set of CVs they saw was name plus photo. Now, all of these CVs were balanced in terms of skills, experience and qualifications. So there was no difference that you could see, apart from some had photographs and names, some didn't. However, what we did do was to, for the sake of the experiment, was to use gender-specific language in the CVs. So for the gender-specific language for women, we used team building, nurturing, interpersonal skills, community. For the stereotypical male language, we use creating, conviction, leadership, accomplishments, ambition. So that was the only variable that could give them a clue as to what gender that might be. They might be. So Group A were looking at the CVs with photographs and names and neither, and we swapped him for Group B. When the experiment was over, the results were fascinating. For instance, Group A actually put 80% of men through when they looked at the CVs with images and names. With no images and no names, they put 60% through the process. Group B was even worse. 100% chose men, whether they were looking at images with names or not. So when this whole group, both groups came together in the room, we then told them the truth of what we were doing. We were checking for unconscious bias when looking for an IT job or an IT specialist in an engineering firm. They were aghast, absolutely aghast. We were asking them things like, why did you choose that person? What were your thought processes? And they kept saying he. Only one person said she. They were all getting really lathered up and getting angry, and they kept saying he. Some were ashamed. They couldn't believe they did it, because if you think about it, recruiters know really well what unconscious bias is, and they pride themselves on being fair. But no, they were aghast that they did this. Some even got angry, really angry with us, because they filtered these CVs, they sifted the CVs based upon gender-specific language. If they hadn't have done, the results wouldn't have been so clear. Now, this is point 1 of this presentation, is the cumulative effect of gender-specific language when it comes to recruitment. Take, for instance, you have got somebody who has just looked and seen a job advertisement. Now, the language in that job advertisement may be gender specific one way or the other. So that would already start to filter, start to sift someone's inclination to actually apply for the full job specification, but they may do. So they get to step 2 and they ask for the full job specification, and there's even more of an opportunity to use gender specific language and to start filtering out that process or some people. Then we get the CV language. So the person who's applying for the job is writing their CV, and they are using gender-specific language, even without a photograph or their name, or even without their date of birth. So their language is starting to filter things out again. Then with the experiment, we get to the 4th stage, where the recruiters are sifting out, filtering people based on the language of their CVs. And the fifth stage is that the CVs finally get to the hiring company's HR department, and perhaps HR may slip into unconscious bias and do a little bit of sifting and filtering out CVs accordingly. Now, you see this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, this cumulative effect of sifting out people by gender, perhaps, or anything else. Now, when I get quite exasperated because you hear people say, there aren't many women who are applying for jobs in engineering. Well, maybe there are, but they're stuck down at step 1. They actually haven't got through all of these stages before they've even got to first interview to get the job. So the point of that is, strategy 1 is we must use gender neutral language when it comes to job specifications, when it comes to writing CVs, right the way through, so that we negate those natural unconscious biases which are extremely unhelpful when we think we're being equal and choosing people and making decent decisions based upon it. Now, there was a second part of the day, a second part of the study, where we actually got together with a group of women from various industries this time. And their biggest issue was they were being overlooked when it came to a pay rise, and they were being overlooked when it came to promotion because they believed unconscious bias against women. Now, this is a point 2 of this whole presentation, is these women kept saying things like, it's not fair I'm being overlooked for a job when I'm a job promotion, when I've got my colleague over there who's a man who happens to have been promoted, I should have got that job. It's not fair, that guy over there has got a pay rise and I haven't. This builds up a huge amount of stress. Now, stress, you might have managers who go, oh, for goodness sake, get over it. Don't worry about it. It should be fine. But what that manager doesn't understand is that one person who is feeling stressed out by all of this unfairness that stress is going to permeate the rest of the team. It's insidious. And equally, when somebody is stressed and being overlooked like that, it diminishes their confidence. So if you have somebody working in your team who is stressed out because things are not very fair in terms of gender, or their confidence is being eroded, they're going to get even more stressed out. Now, what happens with stress is, when we are in a stressful situation, what we tend to do is we close down our focus, so we are looking at the perceived threat. We are handling the perceived threat. That is normal. That is what we have to do to survive. So this person who is stressed out, or the whole team who are now stressed out, are now focusing on the perceived threat. This means that they can't be creative. They can't think outside of this stressful situation they're in. They can't be innovative. They can't be thinking in a creative way to move business forward. That's a dreadful waste of time and talent. Dreadful waste. But there's more to it. Stress has lots of things going on in the brain and the body. But there's one other thing I want to say about it, and that is cortisol, which you've probably heard of. Cortisol is the stress hormone. Now, cortisol in small secretions is really useful. It keeps us sharp, keeps us on our toes, keeps us efficient, keeps us effective. Great. But if you are in a chronic state of high secretions of cortisol, if we're in a high arousal of cortisol and stressful situation that we're in, what that does, that cortisol, it actually can cause memory problems, it can cause high blood pressure, it can cause heart problems, it could even cause some cancers. It is not a healthy place to be. Secondly, cortisol, when it's up here, suppresses some of the feel-good neurotransmitters, one of which is serotonin. Now, I'm sure you've heard of serotonin. It's the happy chappy. It's all about mood, sleep, appetite, and emotion. So when cortisol is suppressing serotonin, we are not eating properly. We're eating too much. We're not eating enough. We're not sleeping properly. We're moody. We're tetchy. We're irritable. Now, cortisol also suppresses dopamine. Now, dopamine is all about motivation and reward and anticipation of that reward, which means we are motivated even more. So if you have got a team who is stressed out because of one person who's stressed out because they're feeling that they're being overlooked for a pay rise or for promotion, then what's happening is your whole team is not firing on all 4 cylinders. They are irritable, they are not motivated, they want to pull the duvet overhead in the morning and they just can't be bothered to get up. They can't be bothered to do the things that they're being employed to do. What a complete waste of time, a complete waste of time. So we need fairness and equality so that we diminish stressful situations in the workplace. So how do we do that? If you're a woman and you feel that you're being overlooked for a pay rise or promotion or something is unfair, please try not to get emotional about it and say to your manager, it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. Instead, build a case for promotion. Work out your goals and your the things that you've been expected to do this year or in the last 6 months. Work out what you've done to achieve them. Work out what you've done that's actually overachieved, and you go with this to your manager and you say, I have a case for a promotion and I would like to discuss it with you. This is what I've achieved this year. So you start to engage the prefrontal cortex, you start to engage all that lovely cognitive brain that we've got, as opposed to the emotional brain, which actually clouds it. So you're muddying the waters, so you're clear and you can go objectively to your manager and request that pay rise or promotion based upon your performance and not overlooked because of their unconscious bias because you are a woman. Point number 3, the ambition conundrum. Oh, this one really gets me. When I was lecturing at university, I was lecturing in neuroscience and psychology. I would speak to a lot of undergraduate students and postgraduates, but I was in particular looking after 3rd-year undergraduate students for their first degree, and I was helping them and supervising them for their final dissertation. It was totally enlightening to talk to the women and the men. One at a time, the women would come into my office and they would say things like, right, I want to be a clinical psychologist, so I need a first-class honours degree. So I need your help to help me get this dissertation spot on. Yep, fine. Then I'm going to go for a master's, and then I'm going to go into to do some voluntary work so that I get experience in the NHS, and then I'm going to apply for my cognitive psychology training, and I'm going to do that. Once I'm trained as and qualified as a cognitive psychologist, I'm going to go then and work in the NHS here in the UK, and I'm going to get all this experience. And brrr, they spoke really, really fast because they're ambitious. They wanted to get cracking. They wanted to do this stuff. The guys would come in just as ambitious, but a little bit more laid back, a little bit more, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this, whatever. Both genders were ambitious. It is not true that women are not ambitious. They are ambitious, but it depends on if that ambition is allowed to grow or erode. And that depends on the environment that they're working in and who their colleagues are and what the managers are like. So if the women are surrounded with unconscious bias where their confidence is being diminished, their ambition is being diminished, it means that they are going to be seen as not being ambitious, where in actual fact they are. They just need nurturing. So can you see how unconscious bias can have such a huge effect on various stages of employment? So strategy number 3 is stake your claim. Tell your manager you're ambitious, you're looking for a leadership role, and you would like their guidance as to how you can achieve that. And also you want to do extra training. You would like to open yourself up to all opportunities that are available to you. Stake your claim. So, my friends, we all have unconscious bias, but they affect recruitment. They affect decision-making. They affect promotions. But the only thing we can do is protect ourselves from harming our business and harming ourselves by being aware of unconscious bias. And not just being aware of it, but constantly being aware of it, because we will slip into default. We can't erase unconscious bias. We will slip into those neural pathways that are beautifully myelinated with white myelin so that they're nicely greased and you go back to them by default. try not to. Be aware that you need to think about things equally. You know you have conscious bias. Check yourself. Be aware all the time. We can't eradicate it, but we can do something about it. However, please, please, please don't confuse unconscious bias with conscious bias, because that's a whole different topic. Thank you for listening.
Linda, thank you so much. Really very, very, very interesting. Really, I mean, an amazing presentation. And I think that if the chief of the organization would be able to understand that a toxic environment is bad for everybody and also for the company, a lot of strange situations wouldn't happen. Anyway, since I want to leave the right time to Gilles, the last presentation, I'm going to read this question from an attendee of the session, Martina Rossi. She's asking a question to Linda, so I'm reading very quickly the question, and I pray Linda to take a couple of minutes, if it's possible, to answer. So, a question for Linda, regarding the gender-specific language. Don't you think that talking about gender-specific language is in itself a discrimination? I am a female. I consider myself ambitious, leading, and creative. I will never be discouraged by an advertisement just because they use these words to describe the job position. And I think if that's what they are looking for, they should write it in the job ad. Please, Linda, take the floor.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you for asking the question. Clearly, you are an incredible person to ignore such language and just go for it and just apply for that job anyway. I'm absolutely delighted, and I hope that is a contagious, a thing that you have there, and you spread it across all of the whole nation and globally. We tend to normalize it because it is normal. So therefore, we normalize it as being, okay, we've all got unconscious bias, and everyone goes, yeah, we tick that box, we'll ignore it. But it actually, unconscious bias creates social injustice. And that is what is very wrong with it. So it is normal, but it's also extremely painful and very harmful to businesses. But you've brought up the idea that perhaps we are now looking at conscious bias because people are using gender-specific language when trying to recruit people. And that is true, but isn't it a worry that people are using conscious bias when we really should be looking at and recruiting people on their experience and their expertise and not even discuss gender? It shouldn't, in my personal opinion, I don't think it should even be mentioned because it's irrelevant to, especially in engineering. I know some fabulous engineers, both men and women, in my family. So I love the engineer's brain. So please carry on. If you're going to ignore gender-specific language, then I take my hat off to you. Well done.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you. I would like to know the age of Martina, but Martina didn't write. This could be interesting. But anyway, so now, okay, the floor is for Gilles. I want just to say that Gilles authored the book Women in Engineering and Science, edited by Springer. Springer is one of our sponsors. And so please, Gilles, take the floor with your presentation.
My name is Jill Tejan, and I am pleased to speak with you about the hidden figures of women in engineering. How did I learn about the history of women in engineering? It all started in 1987 with the Society of Women Engineers and an essay contest. That year, my SWE colleague, Alexis Swoboda, came back from the SWE National Convention with the idea for an essay contest on great women in engineering and science as an outreach program for elementary school students. I told her I thought it was a great idea, and then I asked her who they were, because like many Americans, I knew only one great historical woman in engineering and science. And that was Madame Marie Curie. Marie Curie won 2 Nobel Prizes in 1903 in physics and in 1911 in chemistry. As we did our research, I also learned about her daughter, a Nobel laureate. Irene Joliot Curie won the Nobel Prize in 1935 for the discovery of artificial radioactivity, jointly with her husband, Frederick Joliot Curie. Frederick advocated for a hyphenated last name way before that was the trend, because he wanted to keep the Curie name alive as long as possible. Marie and Pierre Curie had 2 daughters. Alexis and I researched many historical and contemporary technical women for that essay contest. I discovered so many more than the only one I knew at the beginning, and I began to write and speak about these amazing engineering and scientific women through history. Let's learn about some of my favorites, and I have many, many favorites. And then I want to talk to you about the Springer Women in Engineering and Science series and how you might be able to participate. First, I want to talk about the woman who I characterize as my catalyst in this whole process, Admiral Grace Murray Hopper. In 1988, I was elected to the Society of Women Engineers, SWE, National Board of Directors. At the first meeting, the president held up nomination forms for the National Medal of Science and the National Medal of Technology, which are the U.S. equivalent of the Nobel Prize and are presented by the President of the United States, and asked for a volunteer to submit nominations. 17 women in that room, and no one raised her hand. But I was equipped then, and some would argue still, with an auto-volunteer arm, and I volunteered. I was not successful with my first set of nominations, but by 1989 I knew that Admiral Hopper should be nominated, and I believed that she would be selected. I worked on that nomination for 2 years. I contacted the current Secretary of the Navy, previous secretaries of the Navy, senators, almost all of the living computer legends. And in 1991, Admiral Hopper became the first individual woman to receive the National Medal of Technology. By then, she was too frail to attend the ceremony, so she asked me to accept the medal on her behalf, and I did. I accepted that medal from the first President Bush in the White House Rose Garden. Who was Admiral Hopper? Admiral Hopper developed the first computer compiler, the software that translates our human languages, any of them, English, French, German, Spanish, Chinese, Swahili, Japanese, into the zeros and ones that a computer understands. When she first showed her compiler to the United States Navy, it translated French, English, and German. The Navy said, computers don't speak French or German. Actually, they don't speak English either. She also developed the first English-based computer language, Flowmatic, and she was instrumental in the development of the business computer language, COBOL. She famously carried around with her an 11.86-inch piece of wire, a nanosecond, representing the distance that light travels in a billionth of a second, and a key underpinning in understanding how a computer works. Whenever I meet someone who heard Admiral Hopper speak, they always talk about the nanosecond. And she loved to take credit for finding the first computer bug. It was a moth, which she removed from the relays of an early computer at Harvard with her mirror and tweezers. Admiral Hopper was also my first successful nominee to the National Women's Hall of Fame. Most of the women I'll be talking about are included in the first volume in the Springer Women in Engineering and Science series that is titled Engineering Women, Revisioning Women's Scientific Achievements and Impacts. In 1748, Italian Maria Agnesi published a 2-volume, more than 1,000-page manual titled Analytic Institutions that significantly enhanced the mathematical and scientific knowledge of the day. The volumes were written as textbooks for her younger brothers and included algebra and geometry in Volume 1 and differential and integral calculus in Volume 2. Her clarification of the work of the best-known mathematicians and scientists of the day was recognized for its importance around the world, and translations were sought by scientists and mathematicians. She accomplished this in spite of being in a society where most young women, even in the upper classes, were not even taught to read. The French Academy of Sciences described her work on infinitesimal analysis as organized, clear, and precise, and authorized translation of her second volume from Italian into French in 1749. Laura Bassi, an Italian physicist, was a contemporary of Maria Agnesi. She lived in Bologna, Italy, a city that prided itself on being a leading center for women in education. At the age of 20, she was presented with membership in Bologna's Academy of Sciences, which was part of the Institute of Sciences. Shortly thereafter, she received a doctorate in philosophy at the university and named a university professor. But because she was a woman, she was allowed to give public lectures only by invitation. She published scientific papers as a result of some of her research. They involved topics including air pressure, solutions for problems in hydraulics in 1757, the use of mathematics to solve trajectory problems in 1757, and bubbles formed from liquids in gas containers. Other topics of her research, which were not published, included fluid mechanics, Newtonian physics, and electricity. Frenchwoman Sophie Germain was so determined to study mathematics that she persevered even after her parents made sure her bedroom was without light or fire and that she was left without clothes so that she would have to stay in bed. She persevered after she was not allowed into the École Polytechnique at 18 years of age to continue her studies because she was a woman. Her parents had finally relented and allowed her to study mathematics during the day, and now she was ready for more advanced education. Undeterred by the refusal of the École Polytechnique to admit her, she studied on her own through notes obtained from other students. She wrote to French mathematician Joseph Louis Lagrange under a pseudonym, and he was so impressed with her comments that he met with her and commended her observations. She later also communicated with German mathematician Carl Friedrich Gauss, and he was so impressed that in 1831 he was successful in having the University of Göttingen award her an honorary degree. Vibrations and their patterns became the subject of a competition for the French Academy of Sciences. Germain's work, the only entry in the competition, was awarded the grand prize in 1816. The vibration patterns are used today in the construction of tall buildings such as skyscrapers and were used in the construction of the Eiffel Tower. The daughter of English poet Lord George Byron, Ada Byron Lovelace now has a computer language named after her, Ada. A somewhat sickly child, she was tutored at home and competent in mathematics, astronomy, Latin, and music by the age of 14. Totally enthralled by Charles Babbage's difference engine, an early computer concept, at 17 years old, Lovelace began studying differential equations. As proposed, his second machine, the analytical engine, could add, subtract, multiply, and divide directly, and it would be programmed using punch cards, the same logical structure used by the first large-scale electronic digital computers in the 20th century. In 1842, the Italian engineer L.F. Menabrea published a theoretical and practical description of Babbage's analytical engine. Lovelace translated this document, adding notes in the translation. Her notes constitute about 3 times the length of the original document, and as explained by Babbage, the two documents together show that the whole of the development and operations of analysis are now capable of being executed by machinery. These notes include a recognition that the engine could be told what analysis to perform and how to perform it, which is the basis of computer software. Her notes were published in 1843 in Taylor's Scientific Memoirs under her initials, because although she wanted credit for her work, it was considered undignified for aristocratic women to publish under their own names. Ada Byron Lovelace is considered to be the first person to describe computer programming. Chemist Ellen Henrietta Swallow Richards analyzed more than 100,000 samples of the state of Massachusetts water and sewage. As a result, she and a colleague produced the world's first water purity tables and the first state water quality standards in the U.S. She is considered the foremost female industrial and environmental chemist in the 1800s. She also pioneered in the field of home economics. She was the first woman admitted to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, although as a special student, the Swallow experiment, she was actually admitted without having to pay tuition, so the institution could deny that women were enrolled. She was its first female instructor, the first woman in America accepted to any school of science and technology, and the first American woman to earn a degree in chemistry. She is credited as a pioneer in the field of sanitary engineering and the founder of the field of ecology. Ellen Warren Roebling is often credited as the first female field engineer. The Brooklyn Bridge in New York City was completed in 1883 due to her efforts. The plaque on the bridge reads, "The builders of the bridge dedicated to the memory of Emily Warren Roebling, 1843 to 1903, whose faith and courage helped her stricken husband, Colonel Washington A. Roebling, C.E., 1837 to 1926, complete the construction of this bridge from the plans of his father, John A. Roebling, C.E., 1805 to 1869, who gave his life to the bridge. Back of every great work we can find the self-sacrificing devotion of a woman." Mary Engel Pennington helped develop standards for safe handling of milk, eggs, poultry, and fish. She was known as the Ice Lady because she went around to the markets in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the late 1800s and early 1900s and encouraged the vendors to put their food on ice. She had 6 patents associated with refrigeration and spoilage prevention methods, and she established standards for refrigeration railroad cars, which she developed by riding freight trains. Pennington was the first woman elected to the American Poultry Historical Society's Hall of Fame, and she has been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. The First Lady of Engineering, known as the Mother of 12 from the original book and movie Cheaper by the Dozen, Lillian Muller-Gilbreth was one of the founders of the field of industrial engineering and a pioneer in recognizing the interrelationship between engineering and human relations. She showed companies how to improve management techniques, how to increase industrial efficiency and production by budgeting time and energy as well as money. Her work led eventually to career suitability tests, fatigue elimination studies, and the idea of skill transfer from one job to another. Frank and Lillian Gilbreth decided even before they were married that they were going to have 12 children so that they could test their theories of industrial engineering. The famous phrase in surgery, nurse, scalpel, comes from the Gilbreths. A trash can with a foot lever to open the top comes from the Gilbreths. She was responsible for the egg tray, the butter dish, and the vegetable and meat drawers in your refrigerator. Lillian insisted that the washing machine manufacturers not only deliver water to the tub, but also pump it out at the end of the cycle. In 1966, she was the first woman to receive the Hoover Medal for Distinguished Public Service by an Engineer. SWE named her its first honorary member in 1950, and its first scholarship was named for her. In 1965, she became the first woman elected to the National Academy of Engineering. The recipient of 23 honorary degrees, Gilbreth was also the recipient of the first awarding of the Gilbreth Medal from the Society of Industrial Engineers in 1931. Gilbreth was the first engineer honored by a stamp in the Great American Series of stamps by the United States Postal Service in 1984, and she has been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. Edith Clark was the first female professor of electrical engineering in the U.S. That was at the University of Texas. She began her electrical engineering career at General Electric, where she worked on the analysis methods that allowed engineers to study and solve problems of power system losses and performance of electrical equipment. She literally wrote the textbook that electrical engineers used in college to learn how to evaluate the transmission system, the wires that carry power. In 1919, she was the first woman to graduate with a master's in electrical engineering from MIT, but no company would hire her as they didn't have a slot for a woman engineer. Eventually, she was hired. She received a patent in 1925 for her graphical calculator, a method of considering the impacts of capacity and inductance on long electrical transmission lines. It greatly simplified the calculations that needed to be done. In 2015, she was posthumously inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame for that invention. In 1926, she was the first woman to address what is today the IEEE with the topic of steady state stability in transmission systems. In 1932, Edith Clark became the first woman to present a paper before IEEE. Her paper was named the best paper of the year in the Northern District. In 1948, Clark was named one of the first 3 fellows of IEEE. She had previously become the first female voting full member of IEEE. Beatrice Hicks decided to become an engineer at age 13 when her engineer father took her to see the Empire State Building and the George Washington Bridge in New York City, and she learned that it was engineers who built those structures. After she graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering in 1942, she got a job with the Western Electric Company, becoming the first woman to be employed by the firm as an engineer. When her father died in 1946, she became vice president and chief engineer of the company he had founded, Newark Controls Company, a firm specializing in environmental sensing devices. In 1955, she bought control of the company and became president. One of the founders of the Society of Women Engineers, Beatrice Hicks served as its first president. In 1959, she was awarded a patent for a molecular density scanner or gas density switch. This type of switch is a key component in systems using artificial atmospheres. In 1978, she was elected to the National Academy of Engineering, the 6th woman to be elected. She's been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. Recognized as one of the foremost pioneers in the field of solar energy, Maria Telkes is the holder of more than 25 patents. She has been inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. A biophysicist by training, Telkes began her work with solar energy as part of the Solar Energy Conversion Project at MIT in 1939. During World War II, she invented a solar distiller that vaporized seawater and then recondensed it into drinkable water. This solar still, her most important invention, was included in the military's emergency medical kits on life rafts and saved the lives of both downed airmen and torpedoed sailors. It could provide 1 quart of fresh water daily. During her years at MIT, she created a new type of solar heating system, one that converted solar energy to chemical energy through the crystallization of a sodium sulfate solution. The Dover Sun House, a prototype home built in 1948, used her solar heating system. At NYU, she worked on solar stills, heating systems, and solar ovens. Her solar ovens proved to be cheap to make, simple and easy to build, and could be used by villagers worldwide. Her space-proof and sea-proof materials were used on both the Apollo and Polaris projects. Later, her solar energy innovations were used for Solar One, a solar-heated building constructed at the University of Delaware. After her retirement, she was involved with a second experimental solar-heated house, the Carlisle House. She said, "Sunlight will be used as a source of energy sooner or later. Why wait?" On October 21st, 2011, I was at the White House again, in the East Room this time, to see my nominee, Yvonne Brill, receive what is now called the National Medal of Technology and Innovation from President Barack Obama. Every time you use a cell phone or use a credit card to pump your gas, you benefit from her hydrazine resistor-jet propulsion engine, which is used to power communication satellites. The queen of carbon science, Professor Mildred Dresselhaus, was a nanotechnologist who made crucial advances in the understanding of the thermal and electric properties of carbon nanomaterials. At MIT for nearly 60 years, Millie Dresselhaus was the first female recipient of the National Medal of Science in the engineering category and the first woman to receive the IEEE Medal of Honor. She was the first woman tenured in the School of Engineering at MIT. She was the first female institute professor at MIT, an honor that recognizes distinguished accomplishments in scholarship, education, service, and leadership. Her professorship was in electrical engineering and physics. The citation for her 1990 National Medal of Science reads, "For her studies of the electronic properties of metals and semimetals, and for her service to the nation in establishing a prominent place for women in physics and engineering." Her 2014 U.S. Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor for civilians, citation reads, "For deepening our understanding of condensed matter systems and the atomic properties of carbon, which has contributed to major advances in electronics and materials research." On presenting her the award, President Obama said, "Her influence is all around us, in the cars we drive, in the energy we generate, the electronic devices that power our lives." The first woman placed in charge of a branch of the U.S. military, Dr. Sheila Widnall became Secretary of the Air Force in 1993 after she was appointed by President Clinton. Prior to and after her service as secretary, she was at MIT, where she won international acclaim for her work in fluid dynamics. Widnall's father fostered her interest in science and math, and her working mother showed her that women can manage a career and family. She was encouraged to pursue an engineering education. Widnall received her BS, MS, and PhD degrees from MIT in aeronautics and astronautics. She was the first MIT alumna to become a member of the faculty of the School of Engineering, and for many years after she was hired, she was the only woman engineer on faculty. In addition, she was the first woman to head the entire MIT faculty. She's a member of the National Academy of Engineering and has received its Distinguished Service Award. In addition, in 1998, she received the IEEE Centennial Medal, and Widnall has been inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. The first female Hispanic astronaut, electrical engineer Ellen Ochoa, became the director of the Johnson Space Center in 2012. Selected for the astronaut program in 1990, she served on her first mission in 1993 aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery. She was in space on 4 separate occasions, logging over 1,000 hours in flight. Ochoa grew up in California, completing her undergraduate education at San Diego State University, earning a BS in physics, and her graduate work in electrical engineering at Stanford University. She investigated optical systems for information processing and received 3 patents for an optical inspection system, an optical object recognition method, and a method for noise removal in images. Ochoa is the recipient of numerous honors and awards, including NASA's Outstanding Leadership Award. She's been elected to the National Academy of Engineering, and she has received the Harvard Foundation Science Award. Mechanical engineer Helen Greiner invented the Roomba robot vacuum and co-founded iRobot Corporation. Under her leadership, the company grew from a garage venture to over $50 million. iRobot also makes robots that are used in defense and security applications, and those robots have been asked to perform jobs in some pretty intense places, from war zones in the Middle East to the surface of Mars to the unexplored corners of Egypt's Great Pyramids. And now I want to very briefly talk about the Springer Women in Engineering and Science series, which I'm pleased to serve as the series editor for. We are always looking for volume editors. 11 volumes have been published so far. Each volume is expected to be on a topic within any area of engineering and science. As you can see, we already have a pretty broad range, but there are so many topics that are possible. Volume editors are women. Chapter authors are women. There are expected to be 10 to 12, although we've actually gone up to the Women in Industrial and Systems Engineering book has 25 chapters. So anywhere from 10 up chapters, all of the chapter authors are women. As I said, 11 volumes have been published to date. There are additional volumes under contract, and I'm always looking for volume editors. You may contact me at the email that's shown there on the screen, jill.s.tejan@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to provide you with book proposal, templates, additional information, answer your questions, and encourage you to serve as a volume editor. Thank you for this opportunity to present, and I look forward to your questions.
Gilles, thank you very much. Very interesting overview of the women in science and engineering. And obviously, I know that men don't like that I say this, but I mean, it's obvious that women, besides giving, the birth to people in general, they have given so many discoveries to the world. And so this is without doubt. I mean, you have demonstrated with your slides this, but maybe it's very, it's very short your presentation given the time that we had. I personally was happy. I wanted to say this because I could hear that many of the women studied at MIT. I graduated there. I was in the MIT, and I already felt that the MIT has a big concern on the gender equality, but discovered that this was the same centuries ago. I mean, is impressive for me. Just a question: did you have the possibility to study also the private situation of these women? I explain. I heard that many of them had a family, a father above all, pushing them to study, not to fear the possibility to succeed in such a male field, let's say. Do you have any information about this? I give you a couple of minutes. Sorry about this to answer.
Well, actually, in many cases, like you heard with Sophie Germain, her parents actually prohibited her or tried very hard to prohibit her from studying at all. But there was a study that was done, I believe it was in 1988, by Eleanor Baum at the Cooper Union. There's actually a 2-volume study that was done that asked the women who were in engineering at that time in the US what their influences were. And many, including me, many of the women who were engineers in 1988 actually had either a father or a male figure in their family who were engineers. And so there is that family influence. And yes, it really was important, particularly for the early women, to have someone in their family, and it had to be a male figure, because the women, and this is a whole nother topic, and we're now in the 100th anniversary of suffrage in the US, but for many, many years, women were not educated. Women didn't have the access to education. They didn't have the right to own property. They didn't have many of these rights in the US. And so if they were going to succeed in a scientific or engineering endeavor, then they did need some kind of support and encouragement. So it's more today than ever that individual women don't necessarily have to have any kind of sponsorship along those lines in order to succeed in a science and math career.
Thank you, Gilles. I mean, we have a very few minutes. I prefer to use these minutes, to talk all together. First of all, I want to thank you because, I feel that our panel was really interesting and very inspiring to me. And also the idea to create a book, Women in Telecommunications, on women in communications, why not? We can start from us. I mean, Linda, Diana, you and me. I would be very honored to write a book all together, and maybe we can use, our networks to involve female from all over the world. And another point that I want to just, to underline is that maybe all the study that you, and I'm talking about all of you, have done on these issues maybe can help other countries where the problem on the gender issues is still very, behind. I have good friends in India, for instance, and they face a lot of problems. And I'm sure that the age of the freedom, let's say, in some countries is like we were centuries ago. So maybe we can, move our experience to help other colleagues in other countries or other girls to join the STEM matters. So, I mean, if you don't, do you have anything? We have a couple of minutes and then I have to close the session.
Well, I would like, Linda's not in IEEE, but the IEEE women here on the call, I want everyone to think about the possibility of serving as a volume editor for the Springer Women in Engineering and Science series. That opportunity is wide open for everyone to consider.
Thank you for saying this. We are 3 over 4. Linda, you need to, to subscribe to IEEE Society. Yeah, so we can do a lot of things together. So
that's a wonderful idea, and one gets to a stage in life where mentoring the younger people is a way to give back to society, and is an honour to be able to do such a thing. And if we can indeed pool our resources and our knowledge and our skill base together to further the cause, then all the better. Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. So
I agree with Linda. This is one of the points of our chart, and we are committed to do good mentorship and also to engage family to support women and to stimulate them to embrace this kind of careers. Sylvia, I would like to thank you. It was very, very interesting, and
thanks to you,
good
Diana.
session. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep in touch, please. Really hope that we are a small group, but a very strong group. Let me say this. So we have the emails. I will take care of doing something in the future all together. So
I'll be honored to serve as the editor for women in telecommunications or communication.
Yeah, we'll do
You will
this.
hear from me. Absolutely.
Gilles, be sure that we do this.
You bet. I will.
Okay.
It's a promise. Thank you for your offer. So again, thanks to everybody, and we can close the panel with the big, arrivederci. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.